Hello and welcome back for another episode of this season of Try This on Wisp Sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kirstin Lauritzen, and today we are going to talk about a big topic of setting intentions for your workouts. And I'm really, really excited to dive into this topic because I have been learning this for myself. It's something I have been adding in a little bit more into my actual training versus just like on race day. And I really am excited to talk about this topic and present this idea. It's used by many coaches, so it's nothing new necessarily, but it's one thing that's a little bit more new to me. And I think that when we don't set intentions for our workouts, we actually have the possibility that we're kind of leaving something on the table. And there's a lot to learn through about ourselves through setting these intentions. So I'm excited to dive in. So first things first, I wanted to talk about a study that I found when I was trying to figure out like what setting intentions for workouts kind of really means. And this is a very interesting one that was done. It was performed back in 2001, and researchers in Great Britain were working with 248 people to essentially build better exercise habits over more or less like a couple of weeks. And the subjects were divided into three groups. They obviously had just like a control group that was just meant to like do their thing their normal way. And then the second group, so this is where it gets really interesting. So the second group that they had was the motivation group. And they were not only asked to track their workouts, but they also would read some sort of material on the benefits of exercise. So something that was kind of supposed to be motivational, right? Of like, why are you doing the thing you're doing? And it looks, and the researchers also explained that they gave other benefits of like how exercise could reduce like your risk of coronary heart disease and improve heart health and all of these health related things to exercise, right? So all the benefits. And then the third group, these participants were basically given the same presentation as the second group, which more or less was supposed to show that they had the same or equal levels of motivation. But then the third group, though, on top of that, was asked to basically formulate a plan, right? So for when and where they would exercise over the following week. And they were supposed to give it they had to put it into a sentence, right? Like they were going to do X, Y, Z on this day, at this time and in this place. And what was really interesting about the study was that in both the first group, which was the control group, and the second group, 35 to 38% of people exercised at least once per week. But 91% of the third group, which was the one with the motivation plus setting that intention of when they're going to do something and how and at what time, about 91% of that group exercised at least once per week, which was more than double the normal rate from the other two groups. So the reason why I wanted to bring this one up is that a lot of the times I think we get caught in this, like, and actually I hear it all the time in my practice with people that they just don't have the motivation to do something. And I think we've also talked about this probably, or mentioned it at least a few times on this podcast as well. But, motivation just isn't the final, there's a lot more that you have to have, like discipline, for example. If you want to do some of these, races and things like that, and if you really want to achieve a goal, there like comes a time where like the beginning's really fun because, it's something new and you feel good and you're excited to do it. But then like when, you get a couple weeks or couple months in, the stresses of life start to come in and you start to feel this like draw of time. It's probably the best way to put it. It's just, you start seeing you have to make choices on how you're going to spend your time, right? And where are your priorities? And that's, where discipline comes in. But I also think that everybody thinks that we should just be motivated all the time. And when they see people doing these types of races or accomplishing these big things, I've heard from people literally say, oh man, they must be like so motivated. And, I question them and usually say, well, it's probably more about discipline than it is about motivation. But what this study showed, which I thought was so interesting, was that it's not necessarily about motivation and it's not necessarily about discipline. It's really if you set a goal, if you set a very specific intention for what you want to accomplish and what you want to achieve, then it is more likely that you are going to get it done. So how I applied this is I took a step back from this. So I didn't necessarily, as I said at the beginning, I didn't necessarily do this for my training before my first Ironman in Coeur d'Alene this year, but I am doing it for this I have been doing this for the next half Ironman, which is Indian Wells, December 5th, which is only 3 weeks away. It's coming up quick. And I said, okay, I want to see the intentions that I set for myself when I went into it was I wanted to improve my swimming. So what I did was I talked with my swim coach and we said, okay, our main goal is to have me here 3 to 4 times a week. And that obviously has a set time and a set because that's at 5 o'clock in the morning. And that was a very specific goal for me in the sense of, okay, in order for me to achieve this, faster swim time, I need to be at this swim practice, at this time and then go in this many days a week. And so it was very specific and it's been working really well, setting that intention of knowing that this is where I wanted to put a lot of my energy for this particular race has been going well. And I'm really, really interested and also very excited to see what happens at the Indian Well race on that swim. I know it's going to be cold, so I do have that bit of a factor that I'm going to have to work on here in the next little bit, just trying to get used to being in cold water. But I'm really excited to see where that setting that intention goes. Cause I've come out of the water with swimming about a mile-ish or the laps, the way that they are at around 40-ish minutes, between 40 to 42, which was actually a big improvement from 2019 when I did my first half Ironman. But this year, and especially for this one, I would really like to see a swim time where I come out in the 30s. And that's where I'm going to line up. I'm going to line up in the 30 minuters and we'll see if I get there. But that's been the number that I've had in my mind. So this actually works really well because when I, at 4:30 in the morning, when I have to get out of bed and it's just a little bit of a struggle, I just picture that 30 number and that usually helps get me out of bed. And that's the idea, right? That literally is the idea of setting intentions, so that you can, when you really don't want to get out of that nice warm bed with those really comfortable sheets and it's dark out and you really don't want to go get in a pool, just having that intention set already can be extremely helpful at actually getting you to do the thing when the motivation to stay in bed is a lot heavier. So we're going to talk about some other examples right after this short break. So when it comes to setting intentions, there are some different things that you can do, and you can do this in different ways. I obviously just mentioned that I set an intention for the swim because I really wanted to improve that. And so I have this number, this very specific time in my head that I'm holding on to. And then I also, worked with my coach to make sure that the plan was set. And so it was very measurable and attainable, and so I knew what my expectations were. And then of course I also have some of my other trainings as well, and workouts and stuff. And the thing with those though, which has been, this helped me a ton. I found that I was actually really struggling to be on the bike, on the trainer. for some reason, just on this recent, like last couple of months of training, I didn't have a problem with training on the trainer at all. So what I mean by that is that my bike is on what was called a trainer. So the back wheel is taken off and I can bike inside. Unfortunately, well, I don't know what happened, but mentally I have been struggling over the last couple of months at just even doing an hour on that bike inside. I honestly can't figure out why, but I recognized that I was having problems with that. So I did tell my coach, I said, hey, like, these are just so brutal. Like they're mentally very difficult. So we switched up the workouts, which definitely helped a lot, but still, being on there for about an hour was still very tricky. So what I did was I said, okay, at the beginning of the week, I said, okay, this is when we're going to do these bike workouts. And this is the intention that we're going to do, which is that we're going to finish it. That was like the biggest thing. And we're going to stay focused. And then I finished my bike workouts. So that week, right? So I think that that's one way that you can use intentions. You can use them for the week. You can use them for the whole season and for race day. And then you can also use them on just like literally right before the workouts of like, what do you want to get out of this workout? And for some people, there's a wide range of different things that you can get, and set intentions that you can set. The other thing is that we did set intentions for my Ironman race in Coeur d'Alene back in June as well. And that was the intention it was more to have fun and more to just let the training kind of like speak for itself in many ways because the work was already done. Right. But at the same time, it was hard because I think people want to set things like, oh, I want to have a good race. Well, a good race is very vague, right? A good race looks many different ways to many different people. And when you say, I want to have a good race, and then you get to the end and you're like, I don't know, it doesn't matter what time you came in. Is that a good race? So I think when it comes to really setting intentions for race day, as I said, like my main focus for this next one is to have basically a swim time that's faster. Like that's my biggest focus for this next one. And I have many reasons for that. Like I've recognized that if you get into the water later, you end up potentially in the heat of the day. And so my biggest thing for this next year and just this race is going to jumpstart that is that, you know, I just don't want to be in the slower group with the slower swimmers because I just don't want to set myself up for being in the heat in like the main part of the day. Like it just, yeah, I'm going to try to employ this strategy and we'll see how it goes. But if you want to set an intention and you want to give this a try, here's a couple of different things that you can do. So number one, you can set something called a SMART intention. Or a SMART goal. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. And that's a great way to set an intention for a workout. So, in taking, I guess, like my swimming example into play here. So a specific goal that's also measurable and also attainable is to come in at that 30-second, that is unattainable, that 30-minute mark. Like it's not that big of a stretch. And I didn't say that I wanted to come in 30 minutes. I just said I wanted to come in between 30 and 39 minutes. So as long as there's a 3 at the beginning of that number, then I'm going to be happy. And one that's relevant and timely. So for me, those two were more about I had enough time to be able to make that improvement. And then I also focused a lot of my time in on the swim. And relevant is, it's relevant. I really like to be prepared for these races and not unprepared. So Somehow though, I feel like I am just constantly being tested by the weather and everything that I do. So let's hope that December is not a big weather issue. So there's also another way though that you can set some intentions, and I'll just give some examples here, but you can set intentions in many different ways. For some, you can basically, I'll give you like a couple of these statements essentially. And what you can do is you can add I or I am in front of them, and then make them more, to yourself. So specific to you. So an example would be consistent with my training. So I am consistent with my training would be an example of that. Or like I am spending at least 1 hour of the day doing things that I enjoy doing, or I am giving my body time to recover and I'm focusing on all things recovery. I am meal prepping each week to make sure that I'm eating enough food. I go to bed early. And actually that was one that I had to set as well. That was a second intention I had to set because I recognized part of the reason why I wasn't getting up and going to swim is because I wasn't going to bed early enough. Like I needed to legitimately make a switch in my habits and my routines in order to make getting up at 4:30 in the morning to go swim into a habit. So I not only said, okay, I set the intention that I want to get better at swimming, but I'm also setting the intention of I need to also go to bed early, right? And I said, so I really need to get into bed between the 8 to 9 p.m. hour. And so now when I look at my watch and it says 8 or 8:30, I'm like, okay, we gotta go to bed. So that's another example, right, of an intention that I had to set that also was centered around being successful and in making and setting the routines to make something into a habit. Another great one would be like, I don't answer texts or calls during my workouts. That's a great intention to set, especially if that's something that you kind of allow to get in the way. And allows you to, that you let kind of drop your focus. That's a really, really good one. There's so many, right? Like I stretch daily, I stay hydrated, I, focus on my nutrition. I eat enough per day. I mean, there's, I eat what I need, enough of what I need food wise. Especially if food is like one of those things that's a difficult thing, like under eating is something that's a typical thing. Setting an intention of making sure that you're eating enough food each day and each week. That's a really good one. Another one, like I stay focused during training. Another one too, though, and this was one way that I was talking about, whether or not you dictate a workout as successful or not, or feel good about it, is focusing less on the time or the distance of the workout. And if you set an intention of like, okay, so like for this run workout, I want to make sure that I use my glutes like the whole time. I want to make sure I stay active and and make sure that my form is really good for this. That's another really, that's a great intention to set as well, because then it takes a lot less of the pressure. It takes the pressure off, right? I need to be running like 10 miles in this set time, or I'm really, or it could also prevent you from saying like, I'm really slow. And I'm not, getting those times. So I'm obviously a failure, right? Like that whole mental thought kind of it just will get you down a road that is not very helpful, right? So if you set an intention of like, instead of looking at your watch constantly and thinking like, oh, I need to go faster, or, oh, I'm not doing well, in the scheme of things, instead saying like, okay, I want to make sure that like my form is on point. And that's a fabulous intention. And then if you did that, then that's a successful workout. And then you just, compound on top of those, you have more and more and more successful workouts. And now you build a lot more confidence, and then then you're there. Right. So there's always something to work on, obviously. And there's great, intentions to set that. And there's many more that I didn't incorporate here, but it's something that if you haven't tried, I would urge you to try it, because it's been a very helpful thing for me this season. And I'm really looking forward to setting new intentions for next year. I still don't know which races I'm doing next year. And it's something that I've been looking at a lot, but it's something that I'm really excited to do. I think I'm going to wait until after Indian Wells and see how that goes, and then kind of go from there. And that is our episode for now. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow Wisp Sports on all social media channels, and make sure to share this episode with anyone you think may love it. You can also follow me at Dr. Kirstin on Facebook and Instagram, and drkirstin.com. If you'd like to reach us with any comments or questions about this episode, you can at info@wispsports.com. You can also leave a direct message with us over on social media as well. All right. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back next week. Take care.